Thank you very much for inviting me to speak with you. I love coming to Hamburg, although every time I go running around your lake here, it just seems to get bigger. But it's really fabulous to be here and talk about what I think is one of the most important things for us in marketing and communications right now. And the next sort of 30 minutes, what I want to do is to pitch an idea to you that the future is human, that lots of people are talking about the future, and especially our work being automated using artificial intelligence to automate processes, do marketing for us faster, cheaper, better. I want to make the case that humans have a superpower that right now that computer technology doesn't have. My name is Auch Marsden. I'm a chartered psychologist. I work with a digital communications agency, technology advisory company called SYZYGY that is actually based in Germany. What I want to do is, because I want this to be a little bit interactive, I would like you to do something for me, please. What I'd like you to do is, if you could all get out your mobile phones for me. And what I would like you to do with that mobile phone is take a picture of take a selfie with your neighbor, and I would like you to smile as you take that selfie. So if everybody could just take a smiling selfie of this wonderful event that we're here today. Cool. Thank you very much. Now, the reason for doing that will become clear in a few minutes. But what you've done is something that right now, at least, computers don't do. They don't take selfies, and they don't take smiling selfies. And the reason, and I'll tell you why that is important in a minute. But I'd just like to be upfront. I'm a psychologist, so I am part of Team Human. So I believe that humans have really great gifts, really great powers, and actually all this talk about world being automated, taken over. There was a recent survey in Germany saying that a third of German workers would prefer it if their boss was an AI rather than a human being. But I think there's a lot of moral panic around this. And so I'm actually part of this Team Human, and SYZYGY, we believe that the future is human and that we need to put technology to the service of human well-being and indeed the well-being of the planet, rather have technology that we use rather than uses us. It doesn't mean that we're kind of anti-technology. We're a kind of technology firm, and indeed my work prior to SYZYGY actually created an early AI company that for creatives such as you to make creative briefs based on very basic machine learning around a psychology technique called the word association test. But I believe as a psychologist that whilst we've got technology is absolutely fabulous, there's some things that are really great about humans that right now technology can't do. We have human curiosity, which for me is the most one of the most powerful defining features that drives innovation. Our curiosity to understand, go beyond, go further. Our ability to create things in a human way, not an algorithmic way, to actually be able to step into the shoes of somebody else, see the world from their perspective, and then innovate from their perspective. Then our ability, compassion, our ability to care for people, not simply to make the most rational spreadsheet decision, but actually to care and see the person behind the numbers, behind the algorithm. But fundamentally, whilst all these things are fabulous, as a psychologist, I think humans have a super secret power. We have a secret power. And that secret power enables us to do a bunch of things. It enables us to be more creative, more productive, more healthy, more resilient, more successful, more motivated. Actually makes us be perceived and perceive ourselves as more attractive, makes us more helpful, more appreciated, more caring, all these positive things. We have one power, secret power, that technology doesn't have. And that's actually human happiness. Human happiness drives all these things. When you're happy, you're more of a human, you're more creative, you're more productive. All these things happen as an outcome of human happiness. And based on my experience at least, right now, technology, it just has a complete happiness bypass. It doesn't do happiness. Humans do happiness. And happiness, because it's got all these fantastic outcomes that actually just makes us more human, more positively human, we're now tracking more and more about the role of human happiness in society. And rather than saying we need to have economic growth, actually thinking about human growth, about considering human happiness, our well-being, purpose and meaning. These things are actually really important and something we should cherish as humans. So we have the World Economic Forum saying we need to fundamentally shift about be more human, be more humanistic about how we approach the world. The UN produces a report every couple of years, the World Happiness Report. Germany is now standing at the 17th happiest country in the world. And happiness, from a psychological perspective, we call it, because psychologists tend to like, why use one word when you can use two? We call it subjective well-being, or SWB, which is all about two things. It's about, you measure it by how much you're enjoying your life, and then when you kind of think back, it's like, okay, so am I satisfied with my life? So one's affective, your emotions, actually having positive emotions in life, and then feeling satisfied with life. And every couple of years, a major survey is done around the world to see where we are, because happiness really, really matters. Because it's associated with amazing human outcomes, and it actually potentiates and makes positive human attributes stronger. And this is where tech comes in. Does actually tech make us happier? You've got a third of adults who believe that actually social media is bad for human well-being. You've got the majority of people who now think that they have too much screen time, they're too much time in front of the black mirror, the screen, the screen you have. You have people, a significant number of people, the last thing they touch at night is not a human being, it's the black mirror, their cell phone. And the first thing they touch in the morning, it's not a human being, it's a piece of technology. And then technology is fabulous, it's great. But it's actually making us happier. And right now we're in the midst of this tech clash where rather than junk food, we're talking about technology as junk tech, just filling our lives with actually mindless, meaningless, and stuff that doesn't actually make us any happier. You spend an hour scrolling through your social media feed, and that's an hour of your life just kind of gone. And so you've got this backlash saying, is big tech the new big tobacco? Is it responsible for addiction? Are we using persuasive technology to get people stuck into the to the black mirror so we can sell more ads to people? Is it creating social isolation? Is it partly responsible for the outrage we see between people online? Is it a conduit for misinformation, propaganda? And then is it creating polarization where everybody lives and in their own little ecosystem online, where they just have their own views reflected, augmented, amplified, and we stop understanding each other? So tech's having a bit of a problem at the moment in terms of PR, at least, and I think there is some of the evidence suggests that there is at least some truth to this. And in our own world, marketing has been rebranded. Marketing used to be a fabulous thing. We're in the business of creating value, delivering value, and then actually capturing customer or consumer value at the end. But it was all about creating value. And now we've been rebranded as influence ops, influence operations and part of digital sort of work with tracking people, trying to modify, manipulate, and monetize consumer behavior. We kind of got optically tech is probably is not it's having a bit of a rough time at the moment. It's not helped by some of the leading lights of sort of business of tech business. It's downgrading our life. It's downgrading marketing. But when you got the CEO of Netflix saying we're competing with sleep. I'm a psychologist. I know that sleep is probably one of the most important things for actual human well-being. It's like, okay, so this is actually not cool. I don't know if anybody's been to the robot hotel in Japan, where they've actually just fired a bunch of the robots because they got old. But you go to this in a hotel in Japan, and it's completely staffed with robots. So if you get the robot check-in, they used to be dinosaurs. They're actually getting upgraded, and then you get a little robot that takes your bags to your room, and then inside you've got it's actually a pre-Alexa kind of thing that you talk to and that will interact with you. But when I was there, what was really interesting is that you had all these kind of technology doing all actually quite fun interactive stuff, and there was one thing that the robots weren't doing, and I saw this man doing this work, and he was cleaning the windows. So basically, is that what we're going to be doing in this new tech-driven world? Are we all just going to be cleaning windows and leaving the cool stuff to technology? So I think there's some really interesting issues around technology and how we interact with it, which is why at SYZYGY we run a site called digitalwellbeing.org, where we actually look at the evidence, because there's a lot of polarization, there's a lot of hype, there's a lot of spin. Say, technology is the problem with what we're doing, and sometimes it's actually not the problem, and there are other underlying problems. And let's look at the hard evidence. So if you're interested in the relationship between technology and human well-being, take a look at digitalwellbeing.org. I won't go into theory, but basically the model that we have at the moment in terms of the relationship between your relationship with technology, it's not that technology is evil. It's not that Google, Facebook, Instagram is intrinsically bad for you, or that if you're working for a digital agency, you've had an ethical bypass and you're working with the devil. There's actually very little evidence to show that technology in and of itself has a negative impact. So screen time, for example, more screen time, there is no compelling evidence that actually has a negative impact, or the use of social media. What it does do, though, as the more time that we spend, tech time, more time we spend with the Black Mirror, the less time we're doing activities that we know that make humans happy. So it's known as the Displacement Hypothesis or Displacement Thesis, and that's the best model. So it's not that technology is intrinsically bad for us, and even though we've had a revolution in sort of personal technology and we're spending more time on it, it's that we're spending less time because of technology doing the stuff that makes humans happy. And kind of the stuff that makes humans happy is really quite simple. There's an area in psychology that I'm part of called positive psychology that studies the psychology of human happiness. And there are little things, I call them happy nudges, but all these things are being validated. These are the things that make humans happy. When we're kind to each other, when we're nurturing relationships, when we're actually expressing gratitude, when we're developing strategies for coping. All these little things, looking after our body, committing to our goals, learning to forgive, all these things that we can do that actually enhance human happiness. And when we're stuck in the Black Mirror or online, if we're doing less of this stuff, then we're doing less of the stuff that makes us happy. But of course, it doesn't need to be that way. There's an area that, if you're interested, I'd recommend looking at called positive technology. It's about using technology, putting technology to the service of human well-being, without making these things actually more likely. So if you can actually, rather than use technology to displace things that make you happy, if you're actually doing to promote it, which is why the university. California ran a really interesting study, and actually did what you guys did. They asked people for 3 weeks to simply take a photo of themselves taking a smiling selfie. Every day, take a smiling selfie, and they did a controlled experiment. They had a control group of people doing a different online activity and a short activity, and the experimental group doing exactly what you did. And they found after 3 weeks, people who are actually taking a smiling selfie, which psychologically, it makes you remember. Actually taking a photo of something actually can make you remember something, make you remember an event. They were 11% happier at the end. Technology can be used in really trivial ways to have small ways to have a really big impact on human happiness. And if you fancy actually not being 11% happier, if you actually want to be significant, so more than double that in terms of impact, so they ran this control experiment about how technology can actually enhance human well-being and happiness. Really, another simple intervention. Just take a photo every day of something that makes you happy. Search it out. Take a photo. Do that for 3 weeks, and on average, people were 27% happier. So we can actually use technology in a positive way. All this sort of thing about, well, we need to get back to humanizing things. Technology can be a humanizing force if we channel it in the right way. And as marketers, back to my sort of work with marketing and how we work at SYZYGY, we know that people are happier when they practice their character strengths, their human strengths, all these things that, right now, that actually computers really suck at: love, fairness, honesty, prudence, judgment, hope. There are 24 human character strengths that have been validated internationally as when we practice them, these positive things that make humans humans. The more you practice them, the happier you are. And the key is to identify, each of you, which of these things are actually, what's your secret human strength? What can you do that others, that you're best at, or that you most enjoy doing around these things? Practice that and you make yourself happier. And from a marketing perspective, this is known as the VIA, Values in Action Human Strengths Framework. In terms of marketing and positioning and brand communications, this is, for me, this is the heart of humanistic marketing, understanding what is fabulous about humans and then communicating it and trying to encourage it. There's a free online survey that you might want to go and check out to find out, and you can actually find out what is your secret strength around this 24 human strengths VIA survey. It's free. It's worth doing, and for me, it's, even as a psychologist, it was revelatory. And I think from a work perspective, that this framework is incredibly useful if we want to humanize. Everybody talks about, hey, we need to humanize marketing. Well, this is actually how to do it. Focus on what's great about humans. And I think more broadly, positive technology is about extending what is actually brilliant about humans. So I can't claim this as my own analogy, but it's been made a number of times. If you think about technology, it's an instrument, and it should be like a beautiful instrument such as the cello that actually takes human musical abilities and extends it and makes it brilliant. And I think that's what technology should be doing, is actually enhancing what is great about humans. So I want to finish with 3 things that I think that each and every one of us can do to humanize our work, but not simply our work, our life, our personal life as well. And in doing so, embrace our humanity and be happier and actually promote what I believe as a psychologist, as a positive psychologist, is the human superpower of happiness. And this is the only bit of tech or sort of maths I will show. This is happiness. And this is the first thing that you need to know about happiness. Now, I got a kind of a PhD in this stuff, and I didn't understand it. So I kind of, okay, so this is happiness? Really? This is a King's College study that actually looked at happiness. And so talked to the authors and said, okay, so what does this mean in squiggle babble? And their insight, which confirms an insight that comes out of over half a century of research into what drives human happiness, and in driving human happiness promotes human capabilities. They say happiness is a state that reflects not how well stuff is going, but instead whether things are going better than expected. Expectations, human expectations, are absolutely key to our happiness. It's not the quality of the work that you produce for your clients or you produce for your customers or consumers that matters. It's whether or not it's actually better than what they expect. We need to understand expectations. Expectations drive so much human behavior. Google, Mo Gaudat's written a book, managed to write a whole book on a real simple formula. Solve for happy, engineer your path to joy. And the bottom line, if you don't want to read the whole book, which is worth reading, would recommend it, it's basically if your experience is actually better than your expectation, then you're happy. And this summarizes, as I say, half a century of research. Those who have read Harari's book, Sapiens, because human happiness is our superpower, he spends a lot of time talking about human happiness and the science of human happiness. And he says, look, the most important finding of all is that happiness does not depend on objective conditions. It's the correlation between objective conditions and expectations. My own work at the London School of Economics, we looked at customer satisfaction, customer happiness. How happy are you with your product or your service provider? And we found 70% of the variation can actually be accounted for by the gap between what people expect and what they get. Beat expectations, people are happy. Meet them, you're completely forgettable. Miss them, and you create angry customers. And from a human perspective, understanding what your partner expects from you, if you're old enough to have children, what your children expect from you, or what your boss expects from you, or what your customers expect from you, it's absolutely key if you want to promote human happiness. Which is why, you've probably been in some kind of design thinking hell where you're kind of doing this sort of design sprint and you've got to do customer journey mapping, where are the pain points and all the rest of this. From actually, if you want to take a humanistic perspective, it's not about looking for pain points. It's actually looking at what are people's expectations around the customer journey. Because if you understand only when you understand their expectations, can you beat their expectations. Absolutely key. So the one finding from positive psychology, the science of human well-being and happiness, is that actually it's about expectations. You need to understand your own expectations of your partners, of your jobs, and other people's expectations. Because human happiness, that catalyzer, that thing that promotes human growth, is actually based on expectations. So that's number one. Number two, which from a practical hands-on perspective, how do we humanize marketing and business services in general? Comes from one of the most researched areas of human psychology and drivers of fundamental needs. Now, you've probably all heard of, if you're marketers, of Maslow's hierarchy of needs. Now, the problem with Maslow's hierarchy of needs, it's a bit like Myers-Briggs. It's actually not based on science, and there's very little to validate this hierarchy of needs, especially whether or not it's a hierarchy. However, there's been a bunch of research that has looked at what are humans' fundamental needs. What do you need in this room to be happy with your life? What do your partners, what do your significant other, if you have a significant other, what do they need to be happy? What do your customers and clients need to be happy? And time again, research has shown, and there's over 31,000 academic citations and bits of research on this, so that there are three things that humans need to be happy. And they're human, they're human needs. And this is now used in counseling, it's used in therapy, it's used in design, and I believe it should be used in marketing. And I call it the arc of happiness. It actually comes from self-determination theory, and self-determination theory says that there are three things that we need to be happy: an A, an R, and a C. They each stand for something. The first thing that you, your customers, your significant others all need to be happy is a sense of autonomy. You need to experience freedom, choice, control, when you have your personal autonomy taken away from you, when you have that boss from hell that won't let you do stuff that you just know is right, or when you got that your partner saying you can't do that, it actually impacts negatively on our sense of well-being, and then actually pulls down all the fabulous things about what makes humans so fabulous, so awesome. We need to have this sense of autonomy. And that is the first of the three needs. The second is to have a sense of relatedness. You're born alone, you die alone, and in between, on average, you get 2.5 billion heartbeats. And in your 2.5 billion heartbeats of the human lifespan, we spend most of that time trying desperately not to be alone. We need to experience care, connection, affiliation. We're not meant to be alone. We're not meant to be isolated. In terms of our minds have evolved in a way that we are a we species, not a me species. And we need this sense of relatedness. Social isolation is one of the biggest predictors of deliberate self-harm. And we see now in Germany, German teen girls, 1 in 3 suffer from experienced loneliness and social isolation. Now, whether or not the Black Mirror is responsible for that, or maybe it actually helps people connect with others, the jury is still out. But relatedness is absolutely key. And then finally, in the arc of happiness, the A, the R, and the C, is a sense of, a fundamental human need is a sense of competence. We need to experience achievement, mastery, and success. You have to find what's the one thing that you feel good about doing, that you enjoy doing, and you can achieve. You can achieve your goals. Take the VIA survey. Find your secret, sort of your character strength, and work on that, and use that. You'll become happier. You'll feel more competent, and all the other things that make humans so awesome will actually grow, and you will flourish. We need this sense of competence. And a big study that was actually done in marketing, actually compared a bunch of needs, because we've all got lots of different needs, and humans are needy creatures. We've got all sorts of needs. But actually looked at the top, the most cited candidates for top human needs, and the results came in. This was done in the East, in the West, international, using validated psychometric scales, finding that actually autonomy, relatedness, competence, the arc of happiness, they are fundamental human needs. Now, this has I think there are two implications from this. One, it kind of allows marketing to move to a more humanized future, because we realize these are human needs, and so we can start building our campaigns, our communications, the way we create new products around a sense of autonomy, relatedness, and competence. But we can also look at what tech is doing for us. Is autonomous vehicles, are they going to enhance human sense of autonomy, or do they take our autonomy away from us? How can we inject into the experience when you get into an autonomous vehicle that it's actually empowering, and you feel, rather than, the car is control, how can we give people other areas of control so they don't feel out of control when they're in the car? How can we build a new technology ecosystem that's built on building human relatedness rather than division, polarization, and outrage? How can we help turn the internet of me back into the internet of we? Trying to build these things. So is technology actually boosting this fundamental human need, or is it actually destroying it? And then competence. Maybe in Germany, a third of workers would prefer that their boss was an AI. But what if it was their job? SYZYGY ran some research a couple of years ago now, looking at how many people think that their job could be at least partially automated within the next 5 years. And over 50% of people said, yeah, it's going to be automated. What does that do to our fundamental sense of competence? Are we all just going to be cleaning windows on as the window cleaner in the automated hotel in Japan? So how can we use it to enhance human competence? And so those are big questions. But I think from a practical perspective, in terms of everyday work, how can we build communications and campaigns around, make it more human? If the arc of happiness, autonomy, relatedness, and competence are our fundamental needs, how can we build campaigns that actually promote human autonomy? Nike Run, free yourself. Relatedness. This is a startup and called Cute Circuit that create wearable tech. I actually lecture at the London College of Fashion and met their founder. And this is a fun little shirt, and it's called the Hug shirt. It's a bit of wearable tech. You put on your shirt, and when somebody texts you an emoji of a hug, the shirt actually warms and constricts, and so you actually feel the hug yourself. Now, you might think this is quite tricksy, and I agree, it is quite tricksy, but this idea that it's actually building connections, I think, is powerful. Or competence, building our campaigns. You can be a German supermodel, but you're not just a German supermodel. You can be what you want to be. You are competent, you are smart. And so building around these themes are three evergreen things. So this conference today is about growth and humanization. If you want to humanize, these are the three campaign themes you need to speak. You can build on, and to effectively tap into what is human needs that promote human happiness and human growth. Now, the final one I want to touch on is something called the peak end, which is I think for me it's been a really useful insight when putting together from a strategic perspective, sort of looking about where we should invest finite money, whether it be in innovation, in marketing. And it comes from a really odd story. So it's it's about a delicate operation intervention that's actually not about well-being and happiness and human fabulousness. It's actually about colonoscopies. And you may have read this guy's book, Danny Kahneman. He's won a Nobel Prize. Danny Kahneman spent half of his career looking about, okay, so essentially humans, what drives human happiness? What is human happiness, and how can we promote it? And in his book, Thinking Fast and Slow, it's a book of two halves, and the second half of the book discusses at length about human happiness, such as Harari, and how it's actually kind of a weird, it behaves in a weird way. Things that we think make us happy actually don't make us happy, and things that we don't believe make us happy, then do make us happy. And on top of that, how we actually understand and experience happiness is kind of weird. And the way he illustrated one big insight, I think, has a practical implication for brand and marketing strategy, was actually looking at patients, not looking at ads, not using products, but actually undergoing colonoscopies. It's a rather intimate surgical intervention that involves a probe being put up your backside. And Kahneman ran a bunch of experiments where he actually asked people. He developed a whole method called the experience sampling method, and he actually asked people who are undergoing colonoscopies, okay, so how is this for you? And ask people, basically how happy or rather unhappy you are at the moment. So you got people, this is patient A, who is actually on the operating table, intimate operation. You've now got, if you imagine this, you've now got a mad psychologist in there with you. And this mad psychologist is asking you every minute, okay, so how painful is this for you right now on a scale of 0 to 10? So 10, this is super painful, I'm going to die. 0, not painful at all. And he ran this over 200 times. This is patient A's experience, whether it was positive or negative. And so it started, okay, there's nothing happening. Then, whoa! And this is probably where the probe went internal. And then okay, it's not quite as bad. And then the thing went up and then went down. And it was actually a relatively short intervention. And compare this to sort of patient B, this poor guy here, sort of having this intervention. So it goes up, pain, oh my God, oh, more pain, stop. And then just as this one's actually finished, goes up to a peak up here, drops down, and then the thing goes on. And you got this weird thing happening. It's like no pain at all. Okay, the thing's over, and then it goes up again. So it's like, oh my God. And Kahneman So asking people, asking this person overall, and he measured people's overall experience. How was it for you? Now, this wasn't about positive experience. This was about negative experience, human pain and suffering that I believe in marketing and in business in general, we should be trying to reduce. And Kahneman then asked people after this intervention, the patients, he said, okay, so overall, the thing's over now, you survived. How painful was it for you overall on a scale of 0 to 10? So he asked patient A, and patient A said, I'm going to give it a 6. It really wasn't very pleasant at all. And Kahneman thought, oh, good grief, and I've got to ask patient B. Patient B, this kind of went on for longer. The peak was just as high. What happens? My scale only goes up 10. What happens? It gives a 12. And for those of you who are mathematicians here, you'll realize that the overall pain is the area under the graph. And it's clear that patient B suffered massive more pain. So it's like, okay, my scale only goes up to 10. But then Kahneman was kind of lucky because the patient said, how painful was it? 4. How on earth was this possible? This is kind of weird. This patient suffered less pain, but he rated it as more painful. This patient actually suffered more pain, and he rated it overall as less painful. And Kahneman replicated this study time and time again. He found it just was really weird. How bad you thought something was, it didn't seem to have any direct relationship to actually how bad it objectively was. And he came up with, looking at the data, he found that there was something really odd about how we appreciate or don't appreciate experiences. Your clients, your customers, you today will have a bunch of experiences throughout your day. You'll have your journey through life, or you'll be a customer journey, and there'll be lots of touch points about how an experience is. And the peak end rule that Kahneman coined said that actually most of what happens in life really doesn't matter. You forget it. We probably only remember about 2% of our waking lives. Everything else just kind of gets forgotten. In an experience, 2 moments that matter. And that's the peak moment and the end moment. And actually, we evaluate how great things are for us based on these 2 moments, not how things started, not how they are at the minute, where it was most intense, and it could be positive or negative, or the end. And then if we look back, we can actually see that actually the peak end and your overall rating is almost mathematically exactly the mean point between the peak moment and the end moment. This ended on a particularly painful moment, whereas this one actually ended on a less painful moment. And so it was actually less painful. And as a result of this, in surgeries, patients now are left on the operating table longer if they're awake. So you can actually, it moves down the peak end rule and actually makes it a more pleasant experience for people, because the peak end rule, the difference between the peak and how it ends, really is how people evaluate it. So this has been validated time and time again. And even in ads, we know in ad world, ads that end positively with a flourish actually get rated as better ads. People enjoy them more. It's why when we have firework displays, we have that final bouquet at the end. It's maybe why nature evolved us so that we have orgasms at the end of sex rather than the beginning. If we have them at the beginning, they're probably the end of the human race. The ends really matter, finishing strong. And in marketing and service, we're beginning to use it. If you go to Cathay Pacific now, the stewards and stewardesses, and if you're lucky enough to be in business class, they will learn your name during the flight, and so they can say goodbye to you by name as you get off the plane. These end moments really, really matter. We forget most of what happens in life. We remember the peak moment and the end moment. And that's priceless information for marketing, because if we know, we can invest anywhere along the customer journey. We can invest anywhere in our ad, but work on the peak. Where is the peak moment? Invest in that, and then work on the end moment. And you'll be working at the bits, the moments that matter. And I think the point I'd like to make to finish, I think from a marketing perspective, marketing strategy, Kahneman's insight, this peak end rule, it shows that actually experience is worthless. We talk about the experience economy, human experience. Experience in of itself is worthless because we forget most of what goes on. The insight from Kahneman is that actually it's not experience that matters, it's the memories of experience. So whilst experience is worthless, memories of experience are absolutely priceless. And we in this room, our role, we are memory makers. That's what we do. If we're not creating memorable experiences for people, then we're not enhancing human happiness. We're not catalyzing all that is fabulous and awesome about humans. We just become part of the flotsam and jetsam of life that just gets forgotten, like tears in rain. We are memory makers, and we should be building on the insights of the peak end rule to actually focus our very finite budgets with human insight, not algorithmic insight, human insight, that what matters to humans is not necessarily how things start, but it's how things end. It's not how things are all through the experience. What is that peak moment? And invest in that. Make the best moment that your brand has and make it as best it can be. And so in terms of kind of the memory makers, I know as a psychologist that humans actually, our memory is, especially as we get older, it's really tough to get consigned to human memory. You will probably maybe forget what I'm speaking. You maybe forget what some of the other great speakers we've got lined up for us today. But in terms of memories, these are the kind of 3 memories I'd like to leave with you. Focus on expectations. Humans are expectation machines. Unless you understand people's expectations, you cannot understand yourself, you can't understand the people you care for, and you can't understand your customers. And when you beat expectations, you're going to be creating happiness. And happiness is our secret power because it makes us more fabulous. It makes humans awesome. The arc of happiness. Thinking of yourself, think about yourself. Think about if you're feeling down, or if you're feeling you've got a problem with somebody else has a problem, maybe your customers have a problem. Think it's a great diagnostic tool. Think about the arc of happiness. Is this a problem about human autonomy? Is it a problem about human relatedness, or is it a problem about human competence? And a lot of the times, if you're feeling down and you say, am I just being controlled? Am I feeling a bit isolated? Am I feeling like incompetent in what I'm doing? It's a really good diagnostic tool, and it's a fabulous tool to build human and humanistic campaigns on. And remember the peak end rule. You can't invest in everything. Strategy is getting more complicated, but be human. Focus on the human moments that matter. The peak end, where you're the best, your strength. Build on your strengths. That moment where you have that wow moment with a customer, or that weekend break. Double down on the best bit, and then focus on the end. Make that great. And in that way, I think we can all be part of a human future for marketing and be part of Team Human. Now we're signed up to it as Team Human, and hopefully I've shared a few insights with you and convinced you maybe to be part of Team Human and believe that the future is indeed human. Thank you very much.